The Cuck Knights served their queen Renala in Raya Lucaria, using a combination of metal and magic, alongside a magic resistant shield. But how does the Cuck Knight compare to others in combat? Well, like the video and give it to me bite-sized. So this build is pretty strong. We're wearing the Cuck set, which you can farm from the enemies who wear them, giving you some of the best strip available from any of the knights in the game. And this would give us great defense and 51 poise, which is a fantastic starting value for our set. The knights also use two weapons. You have the Partisan, which is equipped with a Glint Blade Phalanx, and I've opted to infuse it with magic so we can benefit from our intelligence investment. We also have the Knight's Greatsword, which is infused with heavy for our strength investment, and I'm using the skill Impaling Thrust, as the original skill the knights use with a follow-up swing isn't available. And lastly, we have our Cuck Shield, which will give us brilliant blocking and magic defense, which we can also use to perform counters. This shield requires 32 strength, meaning we can place some points into intelligence so we get the best of both worlds on the level 137 Vagabond. I'll also note that the Cuck Knights buff their weapon with magic, so I've opted for magic grease, meaning we won't have to carry a staff around and we can maintain our fashion. But now, let's go and defend our queen. So we have our Knight's Greatsword, which deals okay damage, but better damage with magic grease. And the moveset isn't my favourite personally, but it works well enough and is diverse enough to mix up your combat options. Impaling Thrust is great for closing the gap between ourselves and our opponent for brilliant damage, but can be easily read if your opponent is prepared, so be careful. Our next weapon is the Partisan, which is a thrusting spear that does okay damage but gives us a different option for attacking, and with our weapon art Glint Blade Phalanx, we have a super handy option for performing ranged projectiles and closing the gap like Impaling Thrust. Then of course our shield combines nicely with the spear for poking, but you can also do guard counters, which are a hit or miss in my experience depending on whether or not your opponent staggers you, but it's still useful as a response. In PvE, these weapons will be super useful without any flaws, giving us ranged and melee options for fighting, as well as physical damage for magic resistant enemies and magic weapons for opponents weak to magic. We also have the ability to block, which might be useful if you struggle to dodge. And in PvP, you may find the shield less useful outside of guard counters or blocking single strikes, but still useful when combined with our other weapons, and this will help us complete the look for an authentic cosplay. In terms of weaknesses, I would say that against heavily armoured enemies with great swords or super quick enemies power stancing weapons, you will be at a major disadvantage due to the speed of our weapons and the fact that we will likely be out damaged by bigger weapons. Also, be sure you don't block too often, otherwise you risk being staggered for a critical strike. But can we make some adjustments? We could, but I'll keep them minor as to not ruin the aesthetic by adding in the Banished Knight gauntlets and scaled greaves for increased defense and poise, allowing us to take more hits. Then for the Knight's Greatsword, I'll swap Impaling Thrust for Piercing Fang, which is an upgraded version of our weapon art, adding in some talismans like the Shard of Alexander, the Erdtree Favour +2, the Crimson Amber Medallion +2, and the Ball Goat's Talisman. These minor adjustments will give us a boost to our attack power, health, and poise, but most importantly, we can save a few stat points to redistribute into endurance, strength, and intelligence, so we can carry our equipment alongside squeezing out some additional damage. But overall, our playstyle won't change much, as this build is perfectly fine as it is, while being authentic to the original style. You could swap out some of the weapons for other equipment, but I think that would take away from the overall style. I also decided to leave out magic, but we have enough intelligence to add that in, even if it's some of the more close range spells like Carry and Piercer. But to wrap things up, I'll leave you with some arena battles and the boss fight so you can see the build in its entirety. But of course leave your comments below and subscribe. This is Bite-Sized Otaku, and I hope you enjoyed.